Welcome to Dormiveglia. This is where sleep begins to make sense. Stay as long as you like. Long before anyone had a name for it, people noticed something. When the light went away, the body changed. Not slowly over hours, but in a way that felt almost like a tide turning. A quiet surrender that came from somewhere deep inside, not from any decision the mind had made. You did not choose to feel heavy. You did not decide that the day was over. Something in you simply knew and began to soften. Across every culture that has left records of its inner life, you find descriptions of this moment. The ancient Egyptians wrote of the hour when the body returns to the earth. The Greeks described sleep as a gentle god who placed his hand on the eyes of the weary. The people who built the great stone circles oriented them to capture the last light of the evening sun, as if they understood, even without the language of biology, that the transition from light to dark was a sacred threshold, one the body had been waiting all day to cross. What they were feeling, what every human who has ever lived has felt at the approach of darkness, is the rise of a single molecule. A chemical messenger so ancient that it predates complex life on this planet. It was already present in single-celled organisms long before anything with eyes existed to register light. By the time humans arrived, it had been doing this work for billions of years. You have probably seen its name on a bottle at the pharmacy, marketed as a sleep aid. But what it actually is, and what it actually does, is something far more fundamental and far more interesting than anything a supplement label could suggest. It is not making you sleep. It is telling you something more important than that. It's telling every cell in your body what time it is. The realization came gradually. Researchers working with a particular gland, a tiny structure no bigger than a grain of rice buried deep in the center of the brain, noticed that it was extraordinarily sensitive to light and dark. When they exposed animals to bright light at night, this gland went quiet. When the dark returned, it resumed. And whatever it was releasing into the bloodstream seemed to carry information that entire bodies were listening for. The molecule it released, once isolated and identified, turned out to be one of the most ancient signaling compounds on the planet. It crossed cell membranes freely. It reached the heart, the gut, the immune system, the reproductive organs. Not to control them directly, but to tell them the same simple fact. The sun has gone down. Adjust. Everything about how your body behaves in the hours of darkness, your temperature dropping, your hunger receding, your alertness fading, your repair processes beginning, flows from that one signal, from one small gland, from one molecule, from the dark. Here is what melatonin actually is, and what it is not. Melatonin is a darkness signal. It is not a sleeping pill. The distinction matters more than it might seem, because most of what you have probably heard about melatonin treats it as the latter, something you take to force sleep, a biological switch you can flip. That is not what it does, and understanding the difference changes how you think about the whole relationship between darkness and rest. Your brain contains a master clock, a tiny cluster of cells tucked behind your eyes, working continuously, counting time. All day long, while light reaches your eyes, this clock sends a quiet message to the small gland in the center of your brain. Hold. Not yet. The day is not finished. And so the gland waits, holding the signal inside, ready but not released. When the light begins to fade, not the moment it disappears, but as it softens, as it shifts from the blue-white brightness of day to the amber warmth of evening, the instruction changes. The hold lifts, and melatonin begins to flow. Within 15 minutes of darkness, your blood is carrying this molecule to every part of your body, and every part listens. Your core temperature begins to fall, not because you are cold, but because the body knows that the best sleep happens in a slightly cooler system. Your digestive activity quiets. Your immune system shifts into one of its repair modes. Your muscles lose some of their readiness to move. Your thoughts become less insistent. Melatonin is not doing any of this directly. What it is doing is more like announcing the time to a city that has been waiting for exactly this signal. Every biological system adjusts its own behavior according to its own internal logic. But the timing, the synchronization across all of them, comes from melatonin. It is the conductor, not the instrument. This is why taking melatonin as a supplement at the wrong time produces such unreliable results. If your body has already begun producing it naturally, a small additional dose changes nothing. If you take it at 2 in the afternoon, you are sending the wrong message at the wrong hour, and the body is confused rather than guided. Melatonin works not because of its quantity, but because of its timing. It is information, not sedation. The system is also remarkably sensitive to light, particularly to the short wavelength blue-tinged light that screens and LED bulbs produce in abundance. This kind of light, even at low levels, tells your brain that the sun has not yet set. The hold instruction stays in place. The gland waits. And the body, which should have begun its long preparation for rest, keeps running as though it were still afternoon. This is not a minor inconvenience. The downstream effects of melatonin suppression, the failure of temperature to fall, the immune shift delayed, the gut continuing to process when it should be resting, compound across the whole night. You may still fall asleep, but the architecture of the sleep that follows will not be what it could have been. Here is something you can bring with you tonight. The single most effective thing you can do for your melatonin is to give it the signal it is waiting for. Not a supplement, not a ritual, just the right quality of light, or the deliberate absence of it, at the right time. 2 hours before you intend to sleep, begin lowering the light in your environment. Not to darkness. You do not need to sit in a dim room staring at the wall. But dim the overhead lights and move toward lamps, candles, or any warm, amber-toned light source that sits below your eye level rather than above it. If you can, eliminate the blue-white ceiling light entirely. The change in the quality of the light, from the bright, high, cool light of daytime activity to the low, warm, raking light of evening, is exactly the signal your brain is designed to receive. You are not creating an artificial sunset. You are revealing one. Your body has been waiting for this shift all day. Within 20 to 30 minutes of lowering the light, you should begin to feel a change. Not sleepiness exactly, something subtler. A softening, a slight loosening of the grip of the day. That is melatonin beginning to move. You did not take a pill. You changed the light. The body did the rest. If you cannot control the overhead lighting in your home, blue light blocking glasses worn in the 2 hours before bed achieve a similar effect. They are not elegant, but they work. The visual system receives less short wavelength light, the suppression lifts, and the body begins to prepare for what it knows is coming. The goal is to make your evenings feel like evenings again, the kind your ancestors experienced before electric light persuaded every room in the house that it was always noon. Here is the second tool, and it is the one most people overlook. Melatonin does not just respond to darkness. It is part of a larger rhythm, a cycle that governs your entire body across 24 hours. And the single most powerful regulator of that cycle is not when you go to sleep. It is when you wake up. Your wake time is the anchor that sets everything else. When you rise at the same hour each morning, including weekends, you are telling your internal clock precisely where in the day it is. The clock uses that information to calibrate when to rise, when to peak, and when to begin its nightly release of melatonin. Vary your wake time by more than an hour, and the whole system drifts. The melatonin arrives earlier or later than it should. Sleep onset becomes unpredictable. You feel, without quite knowing why, slightly out of time with yourself. The practice is simple. Pick a wake time and hold it. Not as self-punishment, but as a gift to the part of your biology that is trying to keep you synchronized with the rhythm of the day. You do not need to make your sleep time perfectly fixed. Life does not allow for that. But the morning anchor is within your control, and it matters more than almost any other single habit in this space. On the mornings when you have slept later than usual, do not try to compensate by going to bed earlier that night. Go to bed at your normal time. Your body will recalibrate. The system is more resilient than you might think. It just needs the morning anchor to hold. Give it that, and melatonin will take care of the rest. Thank you for being here. Subscribe to continue the journey, and rest well tonight.